Dear students, welcome to English literature class. So today we will study about a very famous sonnet composed by William Shakespeare. Went to the sessions of sweet silent thought. So the sonnet was composed by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was born in 1564 and died in 1616. William Shakespeare belongs to Elizabeth age. Went to the session of sweet silent thought. The sonnet was composed by William Shakespeare. It is a sonnet, or we can say it is a short poem of 14 lines. So, if we find 14 lines in a short poem, it's called sonnet. The sonnet was composed by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was an English poet, playwright, and actor. William Shakespeare composed a total 154 sonnets. And out of 154 sonnets, the first 126 sonnets are addressed to a young person, the Earl of Southampton, and the remaining 28 sonnets are addressed to a dark lady. The sonnet is also known as Sonnet 30. Went to the sessions of sweet silent thought composed by William Shakespeare. So the sonnet is also known as Sonnet 30 because Sonnet 30 is one of the 154 sonnets. It is written in Shakespearean form. In the previous video, we have studied about the definition of sonnet and the types of sonnets. We have studied that there are two types of sonnets: Petrarchan sonnets and Shakespearean sonnets. So, the sonnet was composed by William Shakespeare. So, obviously, it is written in Shakespearean form. It is divided into three quatrains, and in Shakespearean form, we see three quatrains and a couplet. Three quatrains is equal to 12 lines. Each quatrain has 4 lines. So 3 quatrains is equal to 12 lines, and at the end of the sonnet we find a couplet, a group of 2 lines. So 12 plus 2 is equal to 14 lines. So in the sonnet, William Shakespeare addresses the sonnet to a fair youth. The sonnet is addressed to a fair youth by William Shakespeare. The sonnet begins with the remembrance of past things. The poet William Shakespeare remembers his past time in the sonnet. The poet remembers and weeps for his friend who is now dead. So in the sonnet, the poet William Shakespeare remembers his past friend, and the poet feels sad because the friend is no more now. The friend is not in the world. The friend is now dead. The poet feels sad because he has failed to achieve the things he wanted. The poet feels sad. The poet feels pain in his heart because in his past time he wanted to do many things. He wanted to achieve many things, but he has failed to do that things, to achieve that things. He feels that he has not done anything useful, and he also feels some kind of regret in his heart that he has not done anything useful in his life. The sonnet is a lament on desires never fulfilled. So the poet feels sad. The poet weeps on desires, on unfulfilled desires. It means the poet had so many desires in his past time, and the desire was unfulfilled. The desires were unfulfilled. So the sonnet is a lament on unfulfilled desires. The poet feels nostalgic pain. Nostalgic, here he remembers past memory, and the poet thinks about the people who will never come again in his life. The poet met so many people in his past time, and there are many of them were so much liked, were so much loved by the poet, and the poet wanted to meet with those persons, but the people who will never come again in his life. So he also feels sad. He also feels pain when he gets such like idea, when he grab such like idea in his mind, in his heart. And through the sonnet, the poet tries to show the emptiness of love that is no more in his life. The lack of love that is no more. So the poet also talks about the emptiness of love, the lack of love in his life. At the end of the sonnet, we find a couplet, and in that couplet we find an abrupt solution, a sudden solution, that the poet thinks about his friends and allows him to stop weeping over the past. When the poet thinks about his friend, he feels happiness in his heart. It means in three quatrains we find the poet feels sadness, the poet feels pain when he thinks about his pastime, but at the end of the sonnet, the poet feels happiness in his heart when he thinks about his friends. So students, this is your went to the sessions of Sweet Silent Thought, a very famous sonnet composed by William Shakespeare. So thanks a lot.